Phil and Mikhail.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone, and welcome. And just in case you've been from one Zoom room to the other, just to be clear, this is Breakout Session 2. It is a Tuesday, October 13th. It's just after 6 here on the West Coast, and this is What is the Liberal Arts Education? I'm very happy to be here, joined by two incredible panelists. I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself, and then we'll throw it over to Mikhail, and if Amanda's not here by that time, I'll introduce her and get started on the presentation. But I do want to start out with just saying that I hope that you and your family are healthy, you're safe, that you're getting by day, hour by hour, Zoom by Zoom, whatever it takes. I know that's what I've had to resort to. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, what this will also reveal is that Mikhail, Amanda, and I are people too. And we do want you to have self-care as you go through this process. And we're very excited that you're going to be learning about a topic very dear to our hearts, the liberal arts. As the director of West Coast recruitment for Dickinson College, which we'll find out is a small little college on the East Coast, I actually live and have been here for 5 years in Long Beach, California, and I recruit all throughout the West Coast, looking for students who are exceptional in the process and really looking for something different than maybe what we know here in California, which is the big type of schools. And so we'll talk a little bit about the liberal arts education. Then we'll each have an opportunity to talk about our respective institutions and how we approach the liberal arts. And then we'll definitely answer any questions that you may have. And so with that, I'm going to throw it over to Mikhail to introduce himself.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Mikhail Filarski, and I am one of the admission counselors at Lewis and Clark College up in Portland, Oregon. I work with students from Southern California, so I would, be the person to read your application. I'm your main point of contact, and I think I speak for myself, of course, and then Phil and Amanda when I say that our favorite part of this job is getting to communicate with students and with families, hopefully to make this process, easier or at least more navigable for you all. So any way that we can help, we're happy to do so. And I am truly excited to be here. So thanks for having us.
Thanks, Mikhail. And looks like Amanda is probably stuck on the Zoom highway, but when Amanda Whalen comes in, she'll introduce herself, specifically her role at Cal Lutheran University, and we'll also get to learn a little bit more about that institution. So again, thank you for being here. But I always like to provide a roadmap of where we're headed. And at this point, Mikhail, if you want to close your video and mute, you can do so. I think first and foremost is the idea of understanding truly what is a liberal arts education. That is our goal today. We're going to talk specifically about the approach to the academics and how it is different than perhaps what we know, especially here on the West Coast where UC and Cal State rule and reign large in many respects. We're going to talk intentionally about how those student communities may be different from some of the larger professional institutions. We're going to definitely talk about outcomes because having been in college admissions for 17 years and working exclusively at liberal arts education institutions, I know that sometimes the question is, well, what are you going to do? What jobs do you have? We're going to talk a little bit about the admissions process and how it provides us an opportunity to look at your applications more holistically and really get to know you in a way that some of the bigger places and professional places are not able to. Like I said, we're going to hop right into each of our own institutions, probably spend about 5 to 7 minutes each on what makes our institutions distinctive within the liberal arts. And then, like I said, we'll also have time for you to answer any questions, ask any questions, and we can get those answers to you. And I think to that point, certainly if you have any questions, you want to reserve it towards the maybe halfway down the way, because we'll be paying attention to the presentation. So first and foremost, what is the liberal arts? Is it a bunch of Democrats painting on the quad? No, those are liberal artists, right? In truth, liberal arts is the first type of education. Liberal arts is what the Greeks and the Romans thought of education. What we now know as professional institutions really doesn't start to come to the United States until after World War II. And when you think about the liberal arts, at the core of it is the idea that students are going to be able to have an opportunity not just to study one thing. In fact, they will have majors, they'll have minors, perhaps multiple majors, multiple minors, but the ability is to actually look at any academic major and look at it from 360 degrees. In addition, students are taught how to write clearly, whether they're a computer science major, STEM major, or creative writing major. They're also kind of afforded the opportunity how to express themselves and really engage in in-depth conversations with someone who may even have a different opinion, because the class sizes allow that to be facilitated by faculty. And more so than anything, thinking analytically. You know, when we think about some of the buzzwords that come from folks who hire liberal arts majors, it's the fact that they can think outside the box, right? And I think fundamentally, what we know here in California is the big schools, right? What are called professional institutions. They're called professional because they want to know from the very beginning, what is it that you want to major in, right? In fact, you know that if you're applying to engineering, to nursing at a professional institution, their admit rates may be lower than the general pool because they're more competitive, right? At liberal arts institutions, in fact, everyone really does come in undecided unless they have one of those really competitive programs. And again, it goes back to the beginning of education in our civilization. It's education in a circle. Truly, the peak of liberal arts was during the Renaissance period, when people talked about being able to not just do the art, but sell the art, give presentations to get funding for the art, right? This is the kind of skills that are infused within any liberal arts degree from any major that is provided by that institution. When faculty teach and when employers hire, they know that if they have a student graduating from one of these institutions, they're going to be able to have those skills. And truth be told, because we are constantly evolving, you're going to see even nuance in our institutions a little later of how we also have evolved. And some of us now have pre-professional programs. So we do have programs in business, in pre-med, and pre-law. But there are some key characteristics that allow us to make this happen. Intimate learning environments. This is where you're going to see student-faculty ratios low, 8s, 13s, 14s. You're going to see average class sizes in the teens. This is a place where that individualized instruction is at the hallmark of a liberal arts education. This is where students are working one-on-one with faculty and realizing that they're not just this all beacon knowing of information, they're actually your peer. They work with you to get the answers of your education. They really help students understand how is it that you approach a particular subject and think outside the box. Fundamentally, when you think about the liberal arts, one of the key things to know practically is that at a professional institution, general education, so the courses that everyone has to take at a place like UCLA, USC, any of the big places, they're going to have you take 6 to 7 courses outside your major. At a liberal arts school, they're going to allow you to take up to 14 courses outside your major and still graduate in 4 years. The other fundamental practical difference at a liberal arts school is that whereas a major in political science at a big school, a professional school, is going to have all of its courses mainly from the political science department, at a liberal arts institution, a political science major is going to pull from multiple disciplines. It's inherent in the way that they're crafting those majors that it automatically builds in the opportunity to study subjects outside of their major. And it is definitely a place where students, when they prepare their assignments, the lecture halls are not what you would experience at a big school, right? It's not Weird Science or any of the movies that you would have seen where everyone's going to class to hear a lecture. You come to class prepared to engage, prepared to be in an environment with class sizes about 14, 15, and talk about those things. You know, it's a atmosphere where students also participate in community, not just in the classroom, but outside of it. I read an article recently that actually the military service academies consider themselves liberal arts institutions. And that's because their communities are able to tackle things that a large school would not. These are the institutions that are talking about Title IX, that are talking about racial equity and justice in a way that students can have a voice. Even with COVID, you will see a difference between the way an institution handled it if they were a big school and a liberal arts college. I would bet you that most of the liberal arts colleges had student forums for input much more intentionally because they could. Their sizes are generally under about 3,000 students. Sometimes even the smallest, like Soka University down the way, is only about 200, 300 students. So the liberal arts, again, the characteristics is about a broad-based learning in the humanities, science, arts, and the cultivation of thinking and examination. And really what we talk about in the liberal arts is we don't prepare you for one career. We prepare you for the multiple careers you will have in your lifetime. But I know what you're thinking. Liberal arts colleges, where do they even exist? Which ones do I even know? Well, by being here, you automatically know a few, right? You know myself working for Dickinson College on the East Coast. You'll see Lewis and Clark up there in the Northwest. You'll see Cal Lutheran here. Another one of their peers in the liberal arts here is Pomona College, Occidental, right? These are colleges that maybe you've heard of, but are not the big names, right? You know, too often, and that's a whole other session about how we focus in on really only the 50 to 100 schools. When in reality, if you do this process right, you could have a plethora of options by the end of it. But also, like I said, in terms of where liberal arts colleges are located, it's no coincidence that a majority of them are located on the East Coast. Like I told you, most of our professional institutions started in this country after World War II. You know, I like to tell students that it's that idea of Henry Ford, right? And you learned in APUSH where he was about specialization. That's really what professional schools are about. They were designed to kind of increase the amount of people in the workforce through designated specialized majors, right? Whereas the liberal arts have kind of continued the opportunity to study those things, but also outside the box. So again, when you look at this, most of the liberal arts colleges are going to be on the East Coast, and we certainly have some great opportunities here, even in this session, to learn about the ones that are here on the West Coast. Now, the big question is always, will I get a job? And so in terms of that, it's one of those things where I think, you know, one of the things that have come out of specialization and really machine learning, Mark Cuban likes to say that computer programming is going to go away, right? Because computers are already writing their own code. What is really needed, and we've seen in Silicon Valley and other places, are folks who know how to apply the technology, who know how to work a team, right? So there are articles, and I reference this in the PowerPoint that will be shared afterwards with all of you. The articles that talk about all of these big tech companies hiring liberal arts grads. In addition, liberal arts grads are the ones that tend to go to things like the Peace Corps. They're the ones that end up being able to do and earn graduate awards to learn in another country through Fulbright scholarships or MacArthur grants. These liberal arts are really, again, the way that we teach students is that just because you majored in business doesn't mean you have to go and work in business. The idea is that you have the skills to be successful in any company, because the way that you've developed your skill set is not through one piece of major or academic discipline. It's really a blending of all of that. And we'll definitely, each of us, talk specifically about our own internship opportunities. You can see these companies are the same companies you will see at any other major college in America. You know, what I think is very neat about our approach to it, though, is that it's often not just the dedicated office for internships and career development. Faculty have a huge role in the internships and research that students do. Our students develop relationships with faculty, again, where their students see them as their peer in their education. And so because of that, it means also because of how we're sending students abroad at large rates, which we'll see, that you'll have an opportunity to be able to do those not only in the towns in which we live, in the cities in which our colleges are, but you'll be able to do it anywhere in the country. And even abroad, you have the opportunities to do internships and research in a way that's easily accessible without a lot of paperwork, because the colleges are already thinking comprehensively of how to support that. And as just like you would find at a large professional institution, you're going to find that these jobs or these internships often leads to jobs after graduation. But I think it also is important to talk about, right, is some examples of folks who didn't necessarily major in the things that they are currently ahead of. And you can see from this slide that we kind of highlighted some folks who are part of organizations or part of institutions or businesses that you would think, oh, Chris Sharples, he is an architect. He obviously must have been an architecture major in his undergraduate. In reality, he was a history and fine arts major in college. If you've ever seen Justin's Nut Butters in the stores at Starbucks, the packages of peanut butter, butter cups that they have, Justin Gold was an environmental studies major. And then if you look at even those folks like Young Park, who is now working on the coronavirus vaccine, but was one of the first folks to do a vaccine for the Zika virus a little bit ago, he was an economics major. And then last, you think about one of the billionaire women in the country, you think about Epic Management, which basically, if you have any medical record, the system in which it lives is this, usually Epic. She was a math major in college. And so, I like to give these examples again, because what our students learn is that you don't have to pigeonhole yourself into a particular career because of your major. In fact, data shows in the Department of Labor that 80% of people actually end up in a subject or a profession outside of the major in which they got their degree. So that's the liberal arts, generally from a broad overview. Now it's time to talk particularly about our distinctive approaches to the liberal arts. And maybe, Mikhail, to break up the monotony of hearing from me, if you want to hop on and talk about yours first, we can do that. You think that'd be good?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to.
All right, so let me go ahead and start sharing your slides and take it away.
Great. Well, thank you. So again, I am here representing Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon. I thought it would be important to start off with, again, just some of those statistics, an overview of our campus community. We've got just under 2,000 undergraduate students, an average class size of 17, and student-to-faculty ratio of 12:1. All of our classes are taught by professors, as you see there. We do have connections to a graduate campus that specializes in a master's in the arts of teaching, as well as a law school. Our law school is really well known for environmental law, immigration rights law, as well as animal rights law. So if you're interested in those types of things, our undergraduate campus has pathways to those campuses. I think it's important to really note that aside from the name Lewis and Clark, those campuses don't share a whole lot else with our undergraduate campus. Students aren't competing for research opportunities. They're not competing for jobs on campus with those graduate or law school students, and those grad school and law school students aren't on our campus teaching classes either, which is another kind of key difference in the liberal arts compared to some of those larger institutions that Phil was talking about earlier. I also want to talk a little bit about what it means to have an average class size of 17 students and that student-to-faculty ratio. What that means is that you're going to have seminar-style classes. You're going to work collaboratively with your peers. So you're going to be expected to contribute in the classroom. I always tell folks it's kind of a double-edged sword. Thinking back on my own liberal arts experience, there were moments where I maybe hadn't done my reading the day before, and my professor, my peers, they knew that. But I really loved that sense of accountability, in the sense that when I was prepared and had contributions to make, that others were going to listen to me and provide feedback about, you know, what I thought about our readings and our homework. So it's great to know too that you're going to have access to your professors. Phil mentioned that you know, not all internship or job opportunities come from our career center. Instead, they come from the connections that you make with your professors. Your professors might even encourage you to get involved in research as an undergraduate. So that's another key difference at some of these smaller institutions, is the ability to do research as an undergraduate. So Phil, if you don't mind heading on to my next slide. Thank you. So you see some of the same kind of statistics represented on this slide, but this does a good job, I think, of showing you some of the diversity of our campus community. We're extremely lucky to have a really great geographic diversity on campus. We've got 47 states represented, as well as, depending on the year, it can be anywhere between 60 and 70 nationalities represented on campus. So we know that for many of you, especially students from California, of which I was one, you're going to be leaving the support network, the kind of community that you've had for at least the last 4 years that you've been in high school, if not for a bit longer. And you're going to be coming to this new place. And I think it's important to know that you're going to be in a group of students, a first year class that is largely at that same stage. Many students have just left their communities and are looking to build a new community on campus. So it's good to know that as well, we try to make financial aid really accessible to students. You don't have a separate financial aid application process, and we try to be generous with those funds so that we can make Lewis and Clark financially feasible for as many of our incoming students as possible. I do like to point out as well, you see that about 11% of our students come from outside of the US. That definitely plays out in the classroom and the academic setting, but we're also very lucky to have those students represented in kind of our more residential community. About 3/4 of our students live on campus, and those international students are a really big part of that community. They host all kinds of different events. One of my favorites is our International Fair, where the international students take over the dining hall for a day, and they cook meals that they bring from their countries or you know, from growing up, and they share those with the Lewis and Clark community. So just a fun tradition. I think I can go on to my last slide now, and just talk a little bit about the wonderful place that Portland is. If you haven't had the opportunity to visit, I highly recommend it. It is a great city, lots of professional development opportunities for our students in the form of internships and jobs at places like Nike, Adidas, Intel. A lot of our pre-health students will go up the hill to Oregon Health and Science University and do work there. It's also our local hospital, so it's great to get some of that practical experience. And then you've also got lots of great recreational opportunities, especially in the Northwest. The outdoors is a big part of our lives here. If you're not super outdoorsy, that's totally fine. I wasn't when I got here. And there are plenty of other things to get involved with, both in terms of the music scene, as well as some athletics in the city. So it really is a great place to live and study. And I think that kind of does it for my Lewis and Clark section. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, Mikhail. And I think just for saw Amanda pop in, but Amanda will give you a little rest and we'll hop into a little bit more about another option that students have before we learn about Cal Lutheran. And that is a place that I like to say when I talk about it. When students are considering a small liberal arts college on the East Coast from the West Coast, they are exceptional. And that's because only 2% of students in the United States, when they go to college, will go more than 1,500 miles away from home. So you have to imagine if our students are doing that, and we get about 25 to 30 students a year from California alone, that there must be something unique or distinctive about Dickinson College. And really it goes back to our history. If you think about the United States 6 days after the American Revolution, in fact, at the time we were founded, we're literally 2 days horse ride from Philadelphia and Washington. But our founders are sitting on a porch in Philadelphia and talking about American higher education. And at the time, the United States had Harvard, Yale, William and Mary, Princeton, a couple others, but they were teaching students to become academics, clergy, even lawyers. Our founders believed that if American democracy was going to succeed, students needed to learn what they learned and then go back into their communities and give back for the common good. Someone says, well, let's start a high school. Our founder, Dr. Benjamin Rush, says, I think we can do better. Let's start a college. And so that's where Dickinson College is born. We are born at the beginning of the United States for engagement. We're literally set in a small town of about 20,000 folks in central Pennsylvania. You know, that creates in the liberal arts a very distinctive opportunity for our students to build community. Right? I often tell my students when they're looking at the East Coast that you want to go to a place that you're going to call home, right? And one of the nice things about Carlisle is that it's unlike anything we have out here on the West Coast. There really is no comparable or comparative place in the West Coast where liberal arts colleges are that I can kind of tell students it's kind of like this. But what I can tell them is that this is a place where 75% of our students come from outside of the state of Pennsylvania. 52 countries are represented in 40 different states. And we also benefit from having what is called the U.S. Army War College in Carlisle and Penn State's Dickinson School of Law. So it ends up becoming this neat little place for students to kind of explore their passions, their authentic interests, but then also within the liberal arts, some very distinctive investments the college has made. And that is truly the idea of global and sustainable. Dickinson, because of its age, is the first modern foreign language program in the United States. We now offer 13 languages, and distinctively, we actually operate and run 18 of our own study abroad programs. We like to say we do not outsource study abroad. We're very well known for sending students abroad for long periods of time, so as much as a year and a half in order to craft that degree. So this is a place, again, where students are going to be, maybe just like Mikhail said, have an opportunity to be at an international food fair, to learn from their peers what it is that makes them think the way they do. In those small class sizes, learn from someone from Texas, learn from someone from New Jersey, and how do they view the world? You know, there's a lot of great political discourse and conversations in Pennsylvania because it is a purple state. In fact, we have 5 students who've taken the year off to work on campaigns on both sides of the aisle. The last thing that makes Dickinson distinctive within the liberal arts is our commitment to sustainability. And why do I say we're distinctive? Well, we've been talking about sustainability before it was a buzzword since 1980. In particular, the college has made demonstrable efforts to infuse everything we do with sustainability. So along with the accolades you see here, the fact we have a farm, we've been named the #1 sustainable college in America, we also are a place where, like I mentioned, students are going to have an opportunity to take courses outside their major. Well, for us, that means a sustainability requirement. But for that one requirement, students can choose from 100 different courses that come from 40 of our 45 majors. And then we're very proud that in March, after nearly a decade, we attained our goal of being carbon neutral in March of 2020, but it kind of got overshadowed by some other news. Lastly, when you think about the liberal arts, it's the application process and the opportunity to be intentional. Dickinson and many liberal arts colleges were the first in the country to be test optional. We had been test optional since 1994, and in leading the way again this year, we are going to be test blind or test free, meaning we will not consider scores in the admissions process. We do a holistic review, so we do have an opportunity to spend more time with a transcript, to learn about that school, so we don't need the test score. In fact, prior to this, half of our students didn't actually end up submitting their scores anyway. And then we have, in terms of socioeconomic diversity, those students who are there on full scholarships because of financial aid and need and because of merit scholarships, and those whose families have merit scholarships but maybe have a little bit more means. So because of that, 70% in the end do end up receiving some sort of financial aid in the process that is awarded at the time of admission. So again, when you're looking at the East Coast, that's another example of the liberal arts. But we want to end with our wonderful colleague, Amanda, who's going to talk specifically about Cal Lutheran and their approach to the liberal arts. Amanda, welcome and take it away.
Thank you, guys. And I know you've heard a little bit from my colleagues who are from different parts of the country. I'm coming from right here in Southern California, so you guys should be familiar with our weather, which is hard to beat. But we're located specifically, Cal Lutheran, in Thousand Oaks, California. So if you have not heard of that, we're just up the coast. We're halfway between Los Angeles and Santa Barbara. We're the #2 safest city in the country of its size. I believe #1 is actually Irvine. So it would be a very similar jump to come right up the 101 to Cal Lutheran. We're on the smaller side of the mid-sized liberal arts institution. And because of that, it's our highest priority to keep our class sizes and student to faculty ratios low. And that's pretty typical across the liberal arts experience. And that really is a staple. And so here at Cal Lutheran, I will bring in our middle name right off the bat. We are Lutheran. And so for that, we do have 39 different faiths on campus. I want to mention that Lutheran is sort of in our title, but not in our requirement for admission. And so we have students coming from all different faiths, all different backgrounds, students who do not believe in any faith at all. And that really lends itself to the Lutheran tradition. If you're not familiar with that, Lutheran faith is very much circulating around this idea of vocation and developing the whole person and sort of figuring out where you're meant to go next. And that is really how we treat our students and how we expect our students to treat each other. And so you'll see here, this is just a little bit of Cal Lutheran by the numbers. We have students coming from all over the country, all over the world. We, in the past couple of years, have become an HSI, or Hispanic Serving Institution. And so quite a big chunk of our students are coming from underrepresented backgrounds. And we're fortunate in Southern California that most students are pretty familiar with this sort of eclectic group of students that they've been going to school with, and they want to continue that in their undergraduate studies. And so our faculty and our staff create this environment of inclusivity and this prioritization of diversity. We're also ranked in the top 10 friendliest campuses in the United States, and I think that is because our students are just so welcoming. I also oversee our tour guide program, which is a great opportunity to take advantage of. If you're looking at the liberal arts, it's a great way to get plugged into your university right away. But we call our tour guides like the guiding lights of Cal Lutheran, because they're just so welcoming, and people sometimes think it can be a little strange that they're saying hi to every single person that walks onto campus. But that's just who we are, and we want people to feel like they have a place and a seat at the table and a voice to be heard, and that's across the board. You're familiar with our location in terms of Southern California, so we do certainly have students taking advantage of the surf that's close by. It's just about 25 minutes to Malibu from our Thousand Oaks campus, so we do have students scheduling their class schedule around their surf schedule. We still have students coming from your area who hold on to that Disneyland pass for as long as they can, and they'll go down there on the weekends with students. Now you're a little bit closer to Six Flags as well, so some students will do that. But really our location in terms of the liberal arts is what defines us, I think. We're so close to different industries in terms of being close to Los Angeles, being close to Santa Barbara and the ocean, that you can get the benefits of all of those locations without actually having to live in LA or be as far up the coast as Santa Barbara. And so Thousand Oaks is just, in my opinion, a real blessing of a location to be in terms of getting a liberal arts experience, because there's so much nearby to take advantage of. And then this last fact that I'll point out here on this slide is that 97% of our students are either employed or in a job right after graduation, or in a graduate school program, which we do have on our campus as well. And that's our goal. We really want to help students get to that next step. And your faculty at the liberal arts will just absolutely help you get there. They get to know your interests, they get to know who you are and what you want to do, and they help you find that next step. And we're ready for the next slide. Thanks so much. I know I did hear couple other schools to talk about study abroad, which is always so funny to me because we want to talk about the liberal arts, but we also want to talk about kind of getting you out of the school that you're attending and getting you around the world and around the country. We have different programs that are stateside and international, and that is embedded within our curriculum in terms of that experiential learning process. So faculty and staff highly suggest and highly encourage students to get out of their textbooks, get out of their classrooms. You'll be very fortunate to go on a lot of great field trips if you're interested in things like exercise science or environmental science. We're surrounded by 100 miles of hiking trails, so sometimes our geology students are just out hiking for their class periods. Or if you're exercise science, you're very fortunate to know that we have the Los Angeles Rams on our campus for the next few years. They've just extended their contract with us. And so the hands-on experience you're going to get at the liberal arts level is just top-notch. Research is a big piece of the puzzle in terms of a lot of students looking for large research institutions where they think they'll be able to get really deep into research with faculty and do their own sort of studies. And that is absolutely true at the liberal arts level as well. We have some pretty hefty based endowments for research at Cal Lutheran, so students can get paid to do their own research and present at conferences and things like that you might not think about at a smaller school, but that's absolutely available and encouraged for you to take part of. Some of our majors require internships in order to graduate. Those that don't require them, highly encourage them. And really, we want you to be able to say yes to everything. We don't want you to have to feel limited by whatever major you choose or whether you're an athlete or not. All of our students are getting every opportunity at every level. And that's really hard to find, I think in particular at California schools. The California state school systems, the UCs, the Cal States are so large that a lot of students can get a little lost in the shuffle, or maybe don't meet a mentor or something right away to get them plugged into these areas. And that is what we're all about at CalLU and the liberal arts experience. The last slide I'm going to mention here is really, it looks pretty heavy right off the bat, but I'm not going to go through all these nitty-gritty numbers with you. What I want to call out is really the difference between, in California specifically, which is what we're talking about now, the difference between the liberal arts private institution versus the public institution in terms of cost. And that, I think, is really the driving factor of why a lot of students in California are going to choose a public over a private. And we have a couple programs here at Cal Lutheran that I want to highlight. First and foremost is our 4 to Finish program. So if you come to Cal Lutheran and don't graduate in 4 years, we will actually pick up the tab on any of the extra classes that you have to take. We want to get students out in 4 years. We want you to get that return on your investment. We're obviously not trying to force students out the door, but we want them to really make the most of all of these 4 years and not be sort of kind of waiting for classes that they need or hoping that they're going to finish on time. We want to guarantee that. And we're able to do that because of our small class sizes, because none of our majors are impacted. You do not have to apply to a specific major. You can change your major as many times as you want up until the end of your sophomore year to guarantee that 4-year graduation. And I think what students and sometimes even counselors or parents don't realize is sometimes students think that, well, I'll go to a public school, which is cheaper, but you may end up spending 5 to 6 years there and spending the same cost that you would attending a private school for 4 years, and knowing that you're out at that 4-year mark. And with that being said, I will highlight here, right in sort of the center of the page, you'll see our scholarship opportunities. The one that's the most unique to Cal Lutheran, beyond just our typical merit-based academic scholarships, is our public price promise. And essentially that states that if you get accepted to Cal Lutheran, as well as one of at least 6 specific UC schools, those are listed on our website, so if you want to look into that, feel free to just type in public price promise and you'll find all that information. If you get accepted to us, as well as them, we will match their average cost of attendance. So you're effectively getting our education for their public price. And all we need to do is see an acceptance letter from one of those 6 schools. you'll automatically get that. And that basically takes cost off the table in terms of the discussion if you're trying to weigh the cost benefits of a public versus private education. And so that helps us at the liberal arts level to provide just the best academic, social, emotional experience for all of our students. Thank you so much. I think I see some questions popping into the chat, and I'm happy to toss it back over to Phil if he's leading those, or to any of our hosts.
Sure. Thanks, Amanda. I think it's appropriate we all come back on screen. And I love that when I present with different liberal arts institutions, I learn so much more about the liberal arts through their lens. And so thank you for sharing a little bit more about your institutions. And we do, in a couple minutes, have some time for additional questions. If you want to pop those into the chat there, or Q&A rather, we can answer those. And then I'm happy also to have any of our hosts jump in if they'd like to help moderate any of this, or I can take it out myself.
Yeah, this is Anthony. Amanda, we got a question in the chat. So I want to ask that. So I don't know if you saw that. It wasn't put in the Q&A. So it's for Cal Lutheran. And they were wondering, what are you doing to make sure all students feel safe to have political debate on campus? That's part one. And does Cal Lutheran have a certain teaching style, especially as it relates to diverse student learning styles? Traditional lecture versus discussion versus hands-on. So that's a big one. So take what part of it you want. So that'd be great.
Sure. Thank you so much. I appreciate the question or questions. I'll tackle the first part first. What is Cal Lutheran doing to make sure all students feel safe to have political debate on campus? I'm pretty sure most liberal arts are probably doing the same, so I don't want to speak for my other counterparts here as well. But we have a variety of different clubs, groups, organizations on campus that cover the entire spectrum of political viewpoints. And our faculty do a great job of just sort of opening the discussion. They want the students to have the discussion, but they are absolutely not leading it in terms of the way that they feel, which is really great. And I think that that's not just our faculty, that comes from our administration down. Living in California, there's, you know, all sorts of viewpoints. Everyone's coming from a different viewpoint at whatever entry point they are at Cal Lutheran. And so you might start with a different viewpoint than you end up with your senior year. And that could all be because of these discussions that you're having in the classroom, out of the classroom. We have a pretty extensive speaker series that comes through every year. And I'm positive that this year those speakers will be very geared towards sort of our political and presidential happenings around our country right now. And so it really is just, it's just open. So nobody is really being asked to share how they feel, but everybody is being asked to feel comfortable to share what they feel. And so that's our way of going about it. I know it's not super specific, but I think that's sort of what makes the liberal arts what it is as well, is that it's just sort of this nebulous of like being who you are when you are, and being able to change who you are whenever you are, as much as you would like as well. And then our specific teaching style as it relates to diverse student learning styles. I think this again lends itself to the liberal arts experience, because our class sizes are small enough that teachers, faculty can get to know the different learning styles of their students. And so they really can tailor the classroom to what the students need. So if a certain semester of students prefers a more lecture-based class, they might say, hey, are you guys down for a lecture and then tests? Or if the next semester they want to ask their students if they prefer sort of getting out of the classroom and taking a walk and talking, they'll do that as well. So the faculty are just as flexible as the students, and I think that is the sort of beauty of this sort of give and take relationship of liberal arts. And so there are some classes just sort of naturally, like I'm just pulling one out of my head here, biology might be a little bit more lecture based because there are facts that you need to know in terms of biology. But if you're taking, you know, some sort of, philosophy class, you might be like laying on the floor of your classroom looking up at the sky the whole class period. You just don't know what you're going to get. And so the style is really driven by the students and the faculty respond to that. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, and before they hop into the question that's in the Q&A, we did get a question in chat about those of you who are still not clear what a liberal arts is. And I think part of why you're not, you're confused is because often a professional institution will say they have a liberal arts major. And let's be clear, when you are going to a UCLA, a UC Irvine, a Cal State Long Beach, and you are majoring in the liberal arts, that is a specific degree that is designed to be broad-based. When you are at a liberal arts institution like any one of ours, inherently every major has a broad-based foundation that is empowered or awarded at the time of degree. And again, fundamentally, it's this difference between 6 or 7 general education requirements and up to 14 requirements, in addition to majors that are going to pull from multiple disciplines. So a liberal arts institution, all of our majors are inherently liberal arts, whereas at a large school who says they're a liberal arts major, that's a specific degree that is on the diploma that's designed to be broad-based.
And I think it's important to state explicitly that I'm sure each one of our liberal arts institutions still has things like STEM courses. So you can be a science or an engineering major at a liberal arts institution. And I think we get, you know, there's a common misconception that liberal arts schools are both liberal in the political sense and meant for artists or folks who are interested in the humanities. But that's simply not the case. We've got a spectrum of political views on campus, as well as everything from humanities to the arts to the sciences, research across all of those different fields as well. And I think it's important to know that.
That's a great point. And I see Amanda went ahead and answered the Q&A. So thank you, Amanda. And I know that we're running short on time here, but there is another great question. And that's a whole other session, I'll say. But one of the questions is, what is right for me? And I think one of the things that you can do right now in figuring out what is right for you is really understanding what it is you want to major in. And if the thought of having to choose one thing really bothers you, then perhaps a liberal arts institution may be right for you. And I know that we're beyond time, so I'm going to let our host come back in here and close up. But thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you spending your Tuesday evening with us.
Thank you so much to our college partners. This was a great presentation that I'm so happy that we were able to offer this year as a part of the virtual fair. I did pop in a quick little handout that we have into the chat for students and parents to look at that describes a little bit more specifically the differences between a research institution and a liberal arts education that I hope you guys find helpful. We are also, on Phil's last point, going to be hosting a session tomorrow about finding a college that fits. So that would be another great session to come join with all new college reps and a new host. If you guys would like to learn more about different criteria in choosing a college or building your college list, that one is a really, really excellent presentation as well. This last slide is just giving you all some information about the fact that this presentation, like I said earlier, is going to be recorded. It will be available on our website along with the slides later this week. If you want to scan the QR code or open it with your camera on your phone, it will take you to a very quick little survey about your experience with our reps tonight and to help us plan for additional breakout sessions next year. So thank you again to Amanda, Phil, and Mikhail. This was a really excellent presentation for our students, and we're so, so happy to host you this year and maybe even next year too.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.